Have you ever looked back on a situation and thought, I just knew something wasn't right? Maybe it was a relationship that left you questioning yourself. Maybe it was a job where the culture felt, off from the right from the very beginning. Maybe it was a friendship where you found yourself making excuses for behavior that you wouldn't normally tolerate. And then looking back now, you see the signs that seem so obvious. But what's frustrating is that many times we notice those signs much earlier than we admit. We may not have fully understood that we were seeing at the time, but something kept tugging away at us. Something felt uncomfortable, or something just didn't quite add up. Yet instead of exploring that feeling further, we often find ourselves explaining it away. I think that's what makes red flags so uncomfortable to look at, honestly. A lot of times we do see them, we just always want to accept what they mean. We sort of turn those red flags into yellow or maybe even orangey ones, but not quite red. Accepting a red flag may mean that we have to make a difficult decision, one that we're not quite ready to make. It may mean admitting that a relationship, is going south. It may, mean admitting that a job or an opportunity, um, or a situation just isn't what we had hoped it would become. It may mean having an uncomfortable conversation and setting boundaries. And with setting boundaries, having to disappoint somebody or starting over when we are already emotionally invested. And that's where many of us get caught. We may want to believe someone will change. We may want to believe the situation will improve. We may focus on how much we may focus on so much on the potential of what something could have been or could become, that we stop being honest about what it actually is right now. I know I've done this, and I think probably many of us have. We start reasoning with ourselves. We decide we're probably overthinking. We wonder if we're being unfair. We give it more time. We have to collect more proof, more data. You know, we wait for things to become so obvious that we finally feel justified in trusting what we've already noticed. And by the time we finally acknowledge that red flag, we're oftentimes not exactly surprised. We're disappointed, we're hurt, we're tired and frustrated with ourselves because somewhere inside we already knew. And that's why this connects so deeply to self-trust, that inner knowing. Ignoring a red flag doesn't always mean we lack intuition. It often means we didn't trust ourselves enough to take our own discomfort seriously. We may have sensed something before we could explain it clearly. And instead of giving that feeling room, we try to talk ourselves out of it. Intuition can be subtle like that. It may not arrive as this big dramatic warning. Um, Not like those red flags sometimes come up, but it may show up as hesitation, um, uneasiness, or the sense that something just doesn't quite add up. And when we're used to doubting ourselves, we can dismiss that kind of inner knowing very, very quickly. The difficult part is that intuition is not the only thing speaking to us. There's fear, there's hope, there's old wounds that speak to us, there's wishful thinking. I know I get caught up in that. Uh, there's daydreaming, there's the opinions of what other people what other people are thinking. And when all of this is happening all at once, it can become difficult to separate what we truly know from what we desperately want to be true. That's why self-awareness matters so much. We need to understand the patterns behind what we ignore. Are we ignoring red flags because we don't want to be alone? Are we afraid of disappointing ourselves or others? Are we trying to prove we're loyal? That's a huge one for me. Uh, or that we're patient, forgiving, understanding? Are we used to minimizing our own needs because we've been conditioned to always keep the peace? Those are the kinds of questions that reveal the deeper pattern. And this is one of the reasons I appreciate numerology so much. When I look at a numerology chart, I'm not looking for some magical prediction that removes free will from the conversation. I'm looking at patterns and themes and strengths and challenges. I'm looking at timing and the places where we may keep meeting the same lesson, but in different forms. Numerology can help us see where we repeatedly doubt ourselves. It can show us where we may give our authority away, where we overextend ourselves, where we struggle with those boundaries, or where we keep returning to familiar dynamics even when they no longer feel aligned. And when we begin seeing those patterns more clearly, we don't have to keep treating every situation like it's completely separate from the last. We can begin asking ourselves, where have I felt this before? What am I trying to explain away? What am I trying or hoping to change? And what do I already know that I'm not ready to admit yet? That doesn't mean we become suspicious of everything or treat every uncomfortable feeling like it's a warning sign. It just means that we become more honest with ourselves. We learn to slow down enough to notice what we're feeling before we immediately dismiss it. Because often the red flag is not only about the other person or the situation itself, it is also about the moment we realize we have stopped listening to ourselves. That realization can become very uncomfortable, but it can also be very empowering. If we can ignore our own inner knowing, we can also learn to return to it. If we can talk ourselves out of what we see, we can also learn to pause long enough to take ourselves seriously. If we can look back and say, I knew better, we can also begin practicing what it feels like to know better and choose differently beforehand. That's where the growth begins for me. And not in blaming myself for what I didn't do sooner, but in learning how to stop abandoning my own awareness once it arrives. If this conversation resonates with you, my name is Priscilla Daphne. I share reflective guidance around intuition, self-awareness, numerology, emotional healing, and the patterns that shape our lives here on this channel. I also offer privately prepared numerology reports for those of us who want to explore our own patterns more deeply. One of the reasons I prefer my approach is because it gives you time to sit with the information without needing to process everything during a live call or a rushed session. I prepare the report using your unique numerology chart, and I send it directly to you so you can read it, read through it, reflect on it, and come back to it however often as you'd like. What I find most valuable is not simply learning what our numbers are, but it is beginning to recognize the recurring themes, our strengths and challenges, and those lessons and patterns that have been showing up throughout our lives that we often, weren't realizing. And sometimes the report validates things we have always known about ourselves, but never really had a language for. Sometimes it highlights patterns we have been repeating for years, and sometimes it simply offers a different perspective on where we've been, where we are now, and what season of life we may be moving through and moving toward. If that sounds interesting to you, you can learn more at PriscillaDaphne.com. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.